I'm Rick Thomas. I'm wearing colors today to honor Dave. I'd like to thank you all for being here to honor the life of Dave Jannell. Today, Dave is here. He is here with his family, his military family, and friends. The healing force of family and friends. Dave's story is a remarkable story. Every story has an ending, but in life there is only a beginning in each and every day. And that comes from our thoughts and our memories of Dave. Remember Dave in your daily life. Dave's story for me begins when he walked into my office at the San Diego Vet Center. And I'll never forget that hard, cold stare. And that voice. It took a while before I saw that incredible, incredible smile and that wonderful, wonderful laugh. Please never forget Dave's smile and that laugh. For me, there are two Hawaiian words that best describe Dave's heart. Nalu Koa, wave warrior. That's who Dave was. Koa, the warrior, is embodied in the 9th Infantry and the Mekong Delta where Dave served. Before Dave passed, I asked him what were the defining moments, what was the defining moment of his life. He thought and he said, first, earning my combat infantry badge. Secondly, being the platoon leader when we were ambushed in the Mekong Delta. If there was hell in Vietnam, it was the Mekong Delta. The chaos, the destruction, and the death of that moment. The team looked for Dave to direct and save them. The team looked for Dave to lead them through and out of this battle. He provided the courage and the leadership to overcome that incredible, incredible moment. War is a tragedy. It produces physical, psychological wounds to the body, to the heart, and to the soul and spirit of the warrior. The warrior's sword has two sides to the blade. One is constructive, and the other is destructive. The wisdom of the warrior is to know when and how to use that sword. Dave sought the wisdom of recovery and overcoming the triple threat of PTSD, alcohol, and drugs. He practiced, he preached, and he lived recovery. He dedicated his life to recovery for himself, his family, and other veterans and civilians through his work at VVSD, the Vet Center, the VA Hospital, and other recovery groups. The Serenity Prayer was his guiding light. The words, "Give me the wisdom." He was most proud of each and every day of his recovery. The second source of Dave's recovery was knowledge, surf and surfing. In the debriefing process of treating PTSD, you search for the moments of tragedy to heal, and the moments in life that gave joy and happiness to heal the pain and suffering of war. I asked Dave growing up, what brought him the most happiness and joy? And he said, surf and surfing. Recovery is found in recreation. That is recreating that joy, that happiness, so that you may heal. Reconnecting with the joy of surfing and the healing grace of the ocean and of waves. Just to let all of you know, Dave and I never, ever agreed as to who was the best surfer.
Ready to go.
Imagine that. Imagine that. A man who knows. A man who knows. Surfing became an integral part of Dave's healing and his recovery. His surfing style was that of the old style, that of power and of grace. And those of you that were in the water, have been in the water with him, recognize that. The third source of recovery were Dave's family and friends. Without you, his life would not have been possible. It is said that your identity will be whatever you give your heart to. Dave gave his to family, to friends, to veterans, to surf and recover. Dave has life in each and every one of us. Remember his look, remember his smile, and remember his laugh. Dave, 9th Infantry. Watch over us. Protect us. Share your wisdom with us. Aloha, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That was as David's oldest sister. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what Rick Thomas meant to him, and all of you meant to him. So I actually wanted to just to give you like a brief history of the early years, because all of you knew David in the later years, and you didn't know about the origins of our family. And so I thought that I would, with my sister Margaret, she's the youngest, I'm the oldest, this would be a way to just inform and honor his life. So John David was born in Massachusetts, Boston, to our parents Ellen and John Irving Jannell. He was the last of their 5 children and their only son. He was always called by his middle name David, and we call him Dave, because our father was John. My parents moved to Southern California at the beginning of the 1940s with my godparents Fred and Peg Hayes. All 4 of David's sisters were born in Southern California. My mother had serious health issues that made this 5th birth in 5 years, and yes, we are 1 year apart, problematic. So my father drove the family back to Boston for David's delivery. Our grandfather Jannell knew he knew a prominent obstetrician who agreed to deliver her 5th child. I remember the trip and staying with my father's family. My earliest memory of my brother was my grandmother Jannell changing his diaper on their dining room table in Roxbury, Massachusetts. While she was maneuvering this diaper under his bottom, this arc of pee came forth with deadly aim and landed in the sugar bowl. I was pretty impressed. First brother in the family, right? And I was more impressed with my Irish grandmother's response. Welcome to the world, David. Yeah. My mother and her children returned to California by train. My father drove back a car for the dealership he worked at in Long Beach. My mother was left to manage the 5 children on her own. I remember that trip and the stares we received when we changed trains in Chicago. A woman holding a newborn baby with 4 little girls ranging from 15 months to 5 years. It was pretty, I would say, pretty big challenge for this poor woman. We soon left Long Beach and moved to Santa Ana. Our father worked at Devon Motors on Main Street, and we rented several homes in Santa Ana. The first one close to St. Anne's Catholic Church and School. We rented 2 more homes in the southwest area of Santa Ana, all close to Memorial Park. I have many fond memories of all those neighborhoods. We always had families that we played with and got to know as lifelong friends, especially from my mother. Bob and Frances Wells' family lived next door to us in our first home. Bob was in the Navy, so he was gone quite a bit. They had 5 children. David was a baby and a toddler at this time. The second house we lived in was on Towner Street. It was on the corner. The families I remember were the Thanes, who lived next door, and the Baxters, who lived up the street. They had several boys. David was a toddler at this time, but as he got older, he joined us playing and with the Baxter boys. Their next door neighbor, Mrs. Meeks, was always yelling at us, calling us dirty little kids. She accused us of littering, and she yelled if we stepped on her lawn. I remember the day the Baxter boys shoved a garden hose in her window and turned it on, flooding her home. We all got into trouble for that incident, but not long after the garden hose caper, we moved to another home west of Memorial Park on Olive Street. The Towner Street house had many good memories. We got our first TV, and we were the only ones who had one. Not much was on TV in those days. Remember KTLA News and Howdy Doody, but it was still exciting and was an indicator of how much my father was into new technology. The third house we rented was on South Olive Street. Also had many families to play with, but this is where our lives were altered forever. On May 8th, 1951, our father, driving home from an evening event at a new car dealership his company just opened in Newport Beach, was tragically killed in an auto accident. David was 4 and I was about to turn 10. Our mother was widowed with 5 small children, changing the trajectory of our life. Losing a parent, losing a parent at us, so unexpectedly at this young age is an experience that shatters your feelings of security. You learn early in life that nothing is permanent and life can change in an instant. David told me he sort of remembers our father's death. He told Margaret that he remembered our mother screaming when the police came to the house that evening with the news of his death. David was 3 months shy of his 5th birthday. He remembers my godparents, Fred and Peg Hayes, who lived in Long Beach, coming to help my mom at this time, along with my father's friends from work. My father's younger brother, Kevin, who was in the Navy, was able to fly out for the funeral and help for a few days. We were all staying with friends for this time, during this time period, while my mother dealt with the funeral and future plans. My mother was able to buy a new home in the area we had rented. She purchased a new tract home at 1913 South Olive. We were renting on Olive Street, west of Memorial Park. We just moved to the east side. Her family in Maine wanted her to move back. My mother told me she didn't do this because our father wanted us raised in California. 2 years after my father's death, my mother remarried. Our stepfather, Lee Glasgow, was recently discharged from the Air Force, where he served in the Korean War. It was a big adjustment for me. He was given no authority over any of us children. He was good to us and provided outings we would never have had. He loved fishing and hunting. We would go surf fishing and take all of us, or he would go surf fishing and take us all to Crystal Cove, and we would play in the tide pools and have these wonderful days at the beach. I don't think he was thinking about surfing at that time. We were just wandering around in these tide pools. Lee also took us to the Mojave Desert, where he had several quitclaim deeds. Using a Geiger counter, he would look for uranium, and we would hike through the desert spotting rabbits and looking for rocks. We all enjoyed these outings. He also took us to movies and out to dinner. The last few years, David and I were talking about those movies and dinners. David loved movies. All five of us had different memories growing up in our South Olive Street house in the 50s. We were close to the South family. They played that lived on the street. We played with the Humphreys and Freebergs. Those families have plenty of boys for David to play with. We built forts in the orange groves, had parades, and had shows in our backyard. We all attended and graduated from St. Anne's except David. He didn't make it to graduation. He and those Duns just never got along. He finished elementary school at Washington Elementary and then went on to Lathrop Junior High. Surfing was the rage in the 50s and 60s in Orange County, and David surfed with the South Santa Ana guys. Surfing became a lifelong passion for him. One of his friends from that time, Chuck Bassett, will be sharing some of those, hopefully, stories at the reception later today. So David was drafted into the Army in 1966, and after basic training at Fort Ord, he was sent to Germany for training in October of 1966 and then to Vietnam. He was in the infantry, the 9th Division. In his many, many letters to our mom, he called it the lowest of the low. Their battalion was when not walking, were taken to the jungle in longboats or dropped from helicopters. They were flushing out the Viet Cong. He wrote Mom continuously in 1967 about these experiments, as well as his aspirations. Almost every letter signed, "Your loving son, David." My mother kept these letters in a beautiful heart-shaped dandy box her entire life, and she never gave up on his achieving his aspirations. She unfortunately died in 1985. So thank you, Rick, for making that dream come true. Margaret has some, yeah, are we, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got it. You're good. David was my only brother, as he would always remind me when he signed my birthday cards, "Your loving only brother." David had a rough start in life, losing his father at age 4 and having to live with 4 older sisters. We were always close since we were only 14 months apart, and we were the last 2 at home. We shared a room until I was about 8, after he hit me in the ear one night, and my father decided it was time for him to have his own room. Up until then, my sister Gloria had a room of her own. My parents always slept in the living room on a sleeper sofa. My mother always sacrificed for her children. My mother had also instilled in all of us a work ethic. We all worked as kids. David had a paper route, and I used to help him fold his papers. Later, I remember that he worked as a dishwasher at Pop's Steakhouse. He saved up to buy a TV for his room. My father always used to take a nap in the evenings after work, and so we couldn't watch TV. David bought a TV so we could watch in his room. When my father got his Thunderbird, David and I inherited the 1957 Ford station wagon. We shared it for a while. Gas was only around 30 cents a gallon back then, and he would never put in more than $1. I really don't remember what David was doing after I graduated from high school. We were both still at home. I was going to college but commuted. What I do remember was when our poor dog Rex stopped. He just dropped dead. And David and I had to take him to the pound and just dumped him in a dumpster. And that was so sad. I also remember the day I got the letter telling me he was being sent to Vietnam. I had left California, got married, and moved to Oklahoma. My heart sank when I got his letter. I knew he was in the infantry in a very dangerous position. I did not want to lose my only brother. Fortunately, David did survive Vietnam and returned home. But ultimately, his experience in Vietnam contributed to the cancer that took him from all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude our service here today. If you would like
I just love to watch you talking with the Lord. Amazing grace and freedom carved upon the board. You weren't sitting in a building, you were standing on your feet. I know that's how I found you, the same fruit on the tree. We'd go out in the mornings looking for the keys. We'd see the flood before us and get down on our knees. 'Cause every day was Sunday with water on the floor. We'd show up to the service and swim right through the door. Because we found out together we could battle any weather by dancing on the waves. To keep from going under, from tsunamis and the thunder, we'd stay in church all day, all day. almost lost you. Tide was pretty gray. The force of all that ocean carried us away. Went down to the silence, buried in the rain, but came back to the surface. I heard you call my name. Because we found out together we could battle any weather by dancing on the wave. To keep from going under, from the tsunamis and the thunder, we'd stay in church all day, all